Talk about low budget flights. No food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, YouTube viewers, to another video. So, I said in my Sonic Boom video that would be my last video for a few weeks because I'm taking a break. But I decided I'd record one more video and I'll drop it later, a few days after the Sonic Boom video. So, today I'm finally reviewing a Toy Story movie. So, you can obviously tell by the title. Toy Story 2 is my favorite of the trilogy. What are you talking about? There's no Toy Story 4. So, um, you might ask, why aren't you reviewing the first one instead? Well, it's because I don't really have that much to say about it. I like it and all, but I just don't really have, I don't have enough to fill a whole video. Unlike for the second and third movies, I certainly do. And spoilers for people who haven't seen my Pixar ranking, Toy Story 2 is just barely better than Toy Story 3 in my opinion. But I figured, as my last video for a while, why not take a look at why Toy Story 2 is my favorite one. We of course have to start off with the main plot of Woody's story. This is probably my favorite story he has to go through of the three. I'd say, yeah, I guess so, because Toy Story 3 will definitely just focus on Woody. That felt more like it's about all of the toys in general, whereas this specifically feels like it's about Woody. So I think here would just be a nice place to start. I like how this movie expands on the world of the first movie and really goes into how this world would even work. Or ask the question, what happens when a toy breaks? So that's what we get to see here. And Woody ends up turning out to be a super rare collectible, but not before he has that cool, crazy nightmare sequence of him getting tossed out and discarded, which he sees after he finds Wheezy, who has just been sitting up on a shelf, who presumed he's going to be there forever and just never get fixed. It really paints an image of it's bad when a toy gets thrown away, it's for the toy anyway, and especially after Woody got over not being the favorite toy, but he still wants to be there for his kid. So when he has to be tossed away, it really breaks him, especially considering that even after Andy got Buzz, he still loved Woody. But of course, yeah, he gets kidnapped by Owl the Collector and finds out that he's part of an old late 50s toy line and is super rare and is gonna and wants and he now that Woody completes this whole merchandising set, now he's going to be sent to a museum in Japan where he meets Jesse, Bullseye, and Stinky Pete. I think this is a really interesting, good plot. Everything about every scene with this whole thing is just really entertaining, whether it be funny, sad, or just or just I don't really know, bit of bittersweet. I guess I don't know, but I think this is just a really interesting idea to take the story. After all, Western's very popular in the 50s, so saying that Woody was an old Western toy actually makes a lot of sense. And it doesn't contradict anything from the first movie. You could say that, well, how did Andy have a Woody if he's so rare? Well, who knows? He's probably just got him from some random toy drive or something that's been passed down through the years. That would make sense. Or a lot of people say that, what if he was Andy's father's toy? Yeah, I can buy that. And I think this is just, it's a good plot. I guess to really dive into this, we have to dive into each character that has to do with this. So, of course, there's Stinky Pete, who I'll get into him being the twist villain later and so what he actually does as the villain, but I find it interesting how I like how before he reveals himself to be this big evil villain, everything he tells Woody, it has two meanings. One, it's him saying, yeah, this is what's happening and all that. Other time, but it also can be interpreted as this is him as a villain trying to manipulate Woody without actually revealing anything to him. I think that works really well. This is one of the reasons why he's actually a good twist villain. Screenslaver. And I've got more to say about him later on, but also I just like the idea of how he is a toy that was never even sold. So he's just been sitting in this box for a really long time. Decades, probably. Yeah, decades. And yet, I like how, well, of course he is a villain, and that part of his motivation is that he was never sold, but I think it's interesting how he presents himself to the other toys as he's not really super heartbroken that he wasn't sold. Maybe he was, but he got over it. Then there's a Jessie, because yeah, she has to have her own whole section, sort of, which Jessie's really good. I didn't find the When She Loved Me sequence to be quite as emotional as pretty much everybody else does, but I still thought it was done very well. I did not expect that. So I'm glad that I'm glad that this whole story came out, and I like that even though Jessie still has this trauma, she's actually able to somewhat get over it by the end when she's taken in as Andy's kid, and she's able to get over her old kid. And I like that this is played seriously, and this is nobody ever makes fun of Jessie for this sad backstory. It is played completely seriously, but she's still a funny, likable character. That adds some that adds a nice dynamic to the cast, and I appreciated that. But yeah, the real highlight of Toy Story 2, the reason why it's my favorite, is not because of the whole Woody's Roundup story. It's the story of Buzz and the other toys. Because I think the thing that really sets Toy Story 2 and 3 apart for me is that 3 has incredible emotional beats. They will always hit. 2 also has really good emotional beats. Pretty close. But Toy Story 2 is just a riot. It's really funny. And that's what pushes it over the edge for me. I mean, I love how the opening of this movie is Buzz facing Emperor Zurg in this epic showdown. It turned out just to be Rex playing the Buzz Lightyear video game. And I like how this whole video game thing is actually important to the plot, isn't just some random throwaway gag. No time was wasted in this movie. They really went all in on it. And I like how Buzz is actually the one to come up with the plan to save Woody. He finds out through such minimal clues as a feather and the license plate of the car that took Woody. This is why Buzz is my favorite character. Yes, he's funny, but I like how he's also portrayed as really smart and strategic and able to come up with all these plans. After all, in this movie, he's the one leading the charge here, really, because Woody is reacting to everything around him, while Buzz is the character that does the actions this time around. Compared to Toy Story 3, where, well, I still liked what they did with him a lot there, in that it was definitely the opposite. So yeah, I like how when I saw this, I was thinking how I'd heard some people say that in Toy Story 4 Buzz was a complete idiot. Makes me wonder, how was he in the original 3? So I watched 2 and 3 for the first time because I saw 1 years ago, but I didn't really remember it that much. So yeah, I watched 1, 2, and 3 again, and I thought, wow, Buzz was a really cool character. And he leads this whole charge to find Woody, where they eventually make it to Al's Toy Barn, where we get easily the funniest part of the whole series, the second Buzz Lightyear. I like how the filmmaker said that initially, yeah, everyone agreed that the funniest part of Buzz, in the first movie, probably the funniest part of the whole movie, is the idea that he thought he was an actual space ranger and didn't know he was a toy. But they couldn't just redo it because that would be lazy and not really make any sense. So instead, they just have Buzz find another Buzz, and it shows that, yeah, every Buzz out of the box it thinks he is a real space ranger. And I like how it never ends with the original Buzz thinking realizing he's a toy. He just stays like this the whole time. So we get to see Buzz versus Buzz until the fake one joins the whole cast of other toys, because when Rex read a video game manual on the Buzz Lightyear game, he says, "Buzz, I know how to defeat Zurg." So this second Buzz thinks he knows how to defeat Emperor Zurg because he thinks he is real, and he joins on their crazy mission. Oh, and the whole Emperor Zurg stuff is just hysterical. And it never feels like it's just there to waste time. It just feels everything in this movie feels like it's necessary. And I just love how the second Buzz is exposed at the end. There's not a scene of, but how do we tell which is the real one? It's, no, the real one just pushes the button opening the second one's helmet and he thinks he can't breathe and they all instantly know. Also, Buzz shows he has Andy's name written on his boot, which is, all we need. This is just some really funny stuff. This is the kind of classic Pixar humor that I really like. Kind of reminds me of, the whole joke with Mike in Monsters Inc. and Monsters University of him being covered up, but just him vaguely being able to see him on TV is amazing for him. It's that kind of humor, and I really like that. But then there's the climax of the movie. Now this is where things really get going with the, because there already were a lot of some decent emotional beats here, but this is where everything really gets to the next level. Because one of the most iconic scenes from the first movie was Woody yelling at Buzz, "You are a toy!" So here, Buzz gets to tell that to Woody, except it doesn't feel like you're just reusing that line for the sake of, wasn't that a great scene before? It's This is done under a different context, is delivered differently, and feels like it could work without the previous line. Although, then Buzz wouldn't even know this line, so never mind. But yeah, because Woody, he doesn't want to abandon Stinky Pete and Jesse and Bullseye. He wants to go to the museum with them because he knows that if he isn't there with them, it won't be a complete set and they won't get to go to the museum. They'll just be in storage forever. But Buzz is able to tell him, "You are not a collectible. You are a child's plaything. You are a toy, Woody." Isn't it just funny how Toy Story 4's ending completely was the anti to this, where Buzz willingly let Woody, abandon his kids seemingly forever? Let's hope Toy Story 5 fixes that. But anyway, back to this. This is just a really good scene. And I like how this really just gets to Woody instantly. He thinks that, well, yeah, he is a toy. He's not meant just to be there to sit in front in a museum collection forever. Even if a lot of people would see him and be impressed, love him, it doesn't really mean as much as fulfilling his actual purpose, which is to be played with by a kid. And I like how Woody is able to tell Jesse and Bullseye that they should come with him. They'll all be Andy's toys. He'll love more toys, and that way they'll have a home. They'll no longer be in storage. But of course, Stinky Pete reveals himself to be a villain and stops them. This is the first Pixar twist villain, and I think the first, if we count Disney in this, because Disney, Pixar, this may also be the first Disney twist villain. And they did a good job. Sure, Stinky Pete doesn't actually have that much time as a villain, which is one of the many reasons actually why Lotso is a better villain, but I think he still works for the time he gets. One, it actually makes sense. It doesn't come out of nowhere. Two, it helps you as I mentioned before, you can interpret his lines from earlier in the movie as him trying to subtly manipulate Woody. It works. And his motivation makes sense. He was never loved by a kid. He doesn't really truly understand or appreciate what a toy's purpose actually is. He was just sitting on a shelf for decades, for his entire life. So he doesn't want the other toys to ruin his plan of being in a museum, because at least then he'll finally have a purpose. And we get the whole spectacular climax in in the airport with the whole plane chase. We get to finally see Woody's finest hour. This is just such a great climax. I mean, who came up with the idea to have Woody and Buzz ride Bullseye, to catch an airplane that's about to take off, rescue Jesse, have Woody use his pull string as a lasso to help save them, where they ride off. Props to you, John Lasseter. Boy, did you know your stuff. I guess the Lee Unkrich too, and Pete Docter and Andrew Stanton, and all the main creators with this movie. And I just love the ending too. Wheezy, when all the toys return home, which actually shows how they returned home, which is a nice touch. You need to explain things like that. You could just say, "Oh, they got home," but no, it's nice they actually showed that they brought the whole car thing from the airport. And yeah, I like how this movie ends with Wheezy gets fixed, and then all the toys celebrate with a rendition of "You've Got a Friend in Me." That's just such a great way to close off this movie. Also, like, this is a happy ending too. And we get what's probably my favorite scene in the movie, and maybe even the whole series, where Woody Buzz tells Woody, "Are you worried about it? Are you worried about Andy? Nah, it'll be fun while it lasts. But once it's all over, I'll have old Buzz Lightyear to keep me company for infinity and beyond." So, conclusion: Toy Story 2 is my favorite one. Again, this is, as I mentioned in my Pixar ranking, this isn't my favorite Pixar movie, not by a long shot. But it's from their golden age, and it's Toy Story 2. It's still pretty great. I still really like this movie. I just had a really good time watching this, and I enjoyed making this video. This is a fun, nice movie, and I think it's deserving of the title of one of the greatest sequels of all time. Now, the greatest sequel of all time is Kung Fu Panda 2. I mean, let's not kid ourselves, but this is still just really enjoyable. When I watched this for the first time, I hadn't seen the first in a long time, so even though I mostly remembered it, in a way, this was my first time watching one of these movies. Well, it was my first time watching one of these movies while truly being able to appreciate the writing and stuff like that, and the depth and the visuals. Which, by the way, the visuals of this movie, I actually quite like them. They're not they're not trying so hard to be realistic. Toy Story 4 Lightyear, and they were done in such a way where they still look pretty good. The toys, even in the first movie, they still hold up pretty well because they intentionally look kind of plasticky, kind of primitive. So while the humans don't look great, they look good enough. Nothing about this movie looks jarring. And got another great Randy Newman soundtrack, even if it can't compare to the first and third movies. And this is just a really nice movie. I enjoyed watching this. I enjoyed making this video. So comment down below. How would this rank among the Toy Story trilogy for you? I hope to see you guys all again whenever I post next time. So that's all for now, and as always, keep on juicing!